Eva Seyler. I'm back again for another Q&A video. If this is your first time here, I wrote a book, The War in Our Hearts, World War I historical fiction. And I've been doing videos answering a series of questions that people have asked me. And in the last video, one of the questions was, what genre or subgenre do I read the most? And I forgot to mention that aside from historical fiction, I love disaster stories, survival stories. So think mountain climbing, like Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer, or In the Kingdom of Ice by Hampton Sides. I love that kind of stuff. And I also really love travel. That was another book that I forgot to mention in my first video when I was talking about books that I return to a lot. I love Bill Bryson. I've read most of his books, I think all but one, and most of them I've read multiple times, and A Walk in the Woods particularly is a favorite. So yeah, that's just kind of addendum to questions I've already answered. So, on to a new question. Madison Wheatley asks, what advice would you give to a debut author? What are some things to expect? This is a very giant question. I think I'll answer the second one first. What are some things to expect? The unexpected. You get your contract, you go through the editing process and the proofreading process and all of that. I didn't really run into any major surprises or anything when I was going through the process with my book, but speaking also from experience, I'm in a fabulous group on Facebook for debut authors whose books came out this year, 2019. There's another one for anyone who has their first book coming out in 2020. I'll put a link down below. If you're interested in joining that Facebook group, you can check it out if you're an author who has your first book coming out next year. Anyway, across the board, one of the common things that people complain about or whatever is nobody seems to ever know what's going on. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and that's not necessarily always bad. It's just people don't always communicate. So just remembering that sometimes you just need to ask and be straightforward and say, hey, could I get an update on X? Or do you have any news on Y? Just ask questions, because you're more likely to get your information that way than if you just expect that it will be communicated to you, because it probably will not unless you ask. That's something to keep in mind. I'm with a small press, but I have heard the same thing from people who are with big presses. Communication isn't always as clear and open as you might ideally want. As for advice for a debut author, like I mentioned, the Facebook groups are amazing. It's great to support other authors, especially forming kind of little groups of, you know, meeting other people who write in your genre. But you can, I mean, I support all of my fellow debut authors, but I feel particularly attached to the ones who also write historical fiction, because we all write the same type of book, and we're all really dedicated to that, and so it's really fun and easy to promote those for me. So if you're a debut author, join one of those groups. They're amazing, and I'm hoping that we can continue to stay in touch with each other and continue to cheer each other on even after our debut year has ended. That hasn't happened yet, so I'm not sure going forward from this year, but I'm hoping that we will all stay in touch. This will be a shorter video because some of the other questions I have are going to end up being a little long-winded, so I'm not going to start answering them now. So I will end with a poem again. If this is your first time watching, I've been closing all my videos with a poem from The Great War in verse and prose, because I don't know how to not incorporate World War I into pretty much anything. This is called The Vigil. There's a little note at the beginning that says, this poem was first published before 1914, but during the Great War it was very widely quoted, the refrain voicing the spirit of England. England, where the sacred flame burns before the inmost shrine, where the lips that love thy name consecrate their hopes and thine, where the banners of thy dead weave their shadows overhead, watch beside thine arms tonight, pray that God defend the right. Think that when tomorrow comes, war shall claim command of all. Thou must hear the roll of drums, thou must hear the trumpet's call. Now before they silence ruth, commune with the voice of truth. England, on thy knees tonight, pray that God defend the right. Hast thou counted up the cost, what to foeman, what to friend? Glory sought is honor lost. How should this be knighthood's end? Knowest thou what is hatred's meed? What is the surest gain of greed? England, wilt thou dare tonight pray that God defend the right? Single-hearted, unafraid, hither all thy heroes came. On this altar's steps were laid Gordon's life and Outram's fame. England, if thy will be yet by their great example set, here beside thine arms tonight pray that God defend the right. So shalt thou, when morning comes, rise to conquer or to fall, joyful hear the rolling drums, joyful hear the trumpet's call. Then let memory tell thy heart, England, what thou wert, thou art. Gird thee with thine ancient might, forth, and God defend the right. Sir Henry Newbolt. So that's all for this video. Like, subscribe, comment with any questions you have that you'd like me to answer, and I'll get to them as I can. I'll see you next time.